Hey guys, Sierra Bailey here with Accel Commercial Real Estate. The video you're watching ties into our event in June, Accelerate. If you want to learn more about what you see today, scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to get your tickets now before early bird pricing runs out. Enjoy the video.
So have you heard any any rumor, any information coming out from Fannie on when they may loosen up on some of the reserves they're requiring because of the pandemic?
Yes, actually. So 2 days ago, Freddie Mac. Okay, so first, let's real quickly. Brian is talking about right when the pandemic started, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both instituted what are called COVID reserves, which was probably the least liked two letters in 2020 in my industry. That started extremely aggressive. Extremely aggressive. Fannie Mae at the offset wanted 18 months of principal and interest reserved on the front end. And that is outside of replacement reserve. So it was brutal. And there was, people's entire pipelines collapsed. I had $30 million went away overnight. Like it was an extremely tough time. But as the pandemic went on and as, stimulus was understood and the ever apparent Federal Reserve just decided that they were going to go back to the QE3 of 2008 and just chunk money, until the problem allegedly went away. There became a little bit of a transition on what the agencies are requiring. And then 2 days ago, I would argue that the most progressive step that Freddie Mac took forward was that they moved all COVID reserves to interest only. They are no longer requiring COVID reserves if your deal has more than a 135 debt service coverage ratio. And actually, that's it. But Fannie, because a lot of it has been caught up, but Fannie is rumored, speaking of rumors, rumored to be doing virtually the same thing. Now, having said that, I did try to preempt the rules of getting these reserves back on a deal that we did with Freddie Mac, and wrote an asset manager and said, hey, we want to start the unwinding process of getting these reserves back. And the asset manager told me that we are still waiting for the federal, state, and municipal emergency order to be lifted. And so, I think outside looking in, that is probably the most confusing thing that I think anyone can understand. But I can tell you, inside looking out, it is absolutely the most confusing thing I think I've ever heard. So I don't think we really know when the agencies are going to start releasing COVID reserves back. But I do think that there is an understanding, number one, that we are coming out, and that the COVID reserves that we had previously have changed dramatically from where we started. And number two, that they have, they're coming to a point now where it almost seems more favorable to the overall deal. I would argue like where they're at right now is probably where they should have started, but unfortunately I don't get to make that decision.
So one of the questions that I wanted you to, well, not a question, I guess more of a topic. You are, at least in my opinion, one of the better lenders in dealing with syndications and partnerships, syndications and partnerships. So if you could talk a little bit about that, and then talk about syndications in relation to Freddie and Fannie, and also maybe give some, if there were 3 common mistakes that people who are starting to try to do syndications within the Freddie and Fannie world, and then maybe 3 of your hacks, if you've got advice of the pros and the cons, and maybe could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that That is actually a really good question. And just so everybody knows, Jana and I did not do these questions beforehand. So that was a really good question. And thanks. I appreciate that you feel that way. So I do work with a lot of syndicators, and some really well-known ones. You know, some people that have pretty big profiles in the syndication world. So you know, I have a lot of exposure to it, and I've transacted in the space long enough to know. You're asking for 3 common mistakes. I think, you know, you can be long enough, I can give you 30 common mistakes. But I think, you know, if we want to talk about what is really, you know, the do not do's of syndication, I think I could probably come up with 3. And the most glaring one that I can think of that I think is, you know, the most important thing, if you are going to go out and you are going to syndicate, you need to understand your equity. Understand your equity. That is the most important thing I think that any syndicator can do for getting a deal from that LOI that, you know, a lot of folks seem to obtain to closing, which is, you know, what separates the transaction. So, you know, when I say understand your equity,
you mean how much money you really have to bring to the deal?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, exactly. Like, understand what is required of you as a syndicator, because it is not, I think a lot of folks, they think, you know, I'm going to get this property under LOI and then I'm going to, you know, take it out to market, and whatever that market may be, that the equity is going to come flooding in. And that is, you know, you talk to any syndicator that I've worked with that closes, that is probably the exact opposite of the situation. You know, just because a deal sounds like a good deal to you does not mean that it's a good deal to the equity, right? And also it's important to understand, like, what does your equity want? You know, if your equity says, I'm a cash on cash return investor, then, and you're out trying to pump rate, that's not your most advantageous thing to pump. Your most advantageous thing to pump when you're trying to chase cash on cash is IO, right? So, you know, the idea of syndication is that you can combine equity to a deal and align it with a debt structure that promotes what you're out there promoting, right? And if you don't understand where your equity is coming from, what that equity is going to cost, and, you know, what are the challenges that you're going to have to get that equity, then you may have a signed LOI with a lot of money hard and find yourself in a big pickle. And I think, you know, syndication is not, there's a lot of books out there that, you know, say, you know, real estate's easy. You do it with other people's money. And it's, you know, all you got to do is raise $5 million, you know, and I would challenge anybody to say, you know, do you really think it's that easy to raise $5 million? It's not. And I think a lot of people find that out, but they find that out at the wrong time, right? So, you know, there's this, I guess, you know, it kind of gets passed around, you know, start small and, you know, build yourself up. I don't necessarily agree with that. What I think is start where you can, right? Start, how much money can you raise? And if you can raise $5 million and you truly believe it, well, you know, go buy a $20 million property, right? You know, but you have to align yourself with the equity expectations. The second thing I think that's most important in syndication is to, and I was talking about it earlier, is to understand your team, because it is highly unlikely that one singular individual is going to have, you know, a really, really high net worth, a lot of liquidity, and a lot of multifamily experience. That, and if they do, right, they're going to cap out somewhere, right? I've worked with some folks that, you know, have high net worths, and I don't want to. Some of my clients are more well known, so I'm just going to make up an arbitrary number, and I'm not assigning this to anybody. But let's just say, you know, they have a $30 million net worth, and they have done all the $30 million property that they want. They're ready to grow, and they need, you know, a $50 million loan, and they need, you know, more firepower inside the team. So, you know, that I think that is something that it doesn't matter where you're at. If you want to go forward, more than likely you're going to need a partnership. And these things are very intimate when you get into the underwriting stages of this stuff. I mean, you are partnering with people where you are both signing onto a loan that, you know, it is non-recourse, right? But number one, if it goes belly up, you completely ruin your relationship with Fannie and Freddie, and they're never going to lend to you again. Number two, if you activate what we call a bad boy carve-out, which is essentially, you know, something fraudulent. If you activate that and, you know, then you mess up and that gets caught, you're committing fraud, right? And then it becomes a recourse loan, and then your entire balance sheet is wiped out. So when we, you know, see these partnerships, it's good for syndicators to understand, you know, where they're weak. Well, not weak, you know, somebody with $30 million is not weak, but where they need more firepower. And if they need that more firepower, who they're bringing in to shoot that gun, right? Because that is incredibly important to understand the folks that you're working with, and to understand what each person is bringing to the table, and to understand, you know, before you get into the deal, what everyone's compensation is going to be for doing that, whether that's GP vote or fees or whatever. And the third thing, I don't know, I want to come up with something good. Not using me for the debt. No, I don't know. I don't know if I have a third common mistake right off the bat, but I think those are two really, really important things: is to know your team and to know your equity. And 3 hacks. Oh, you know what? I do have a third common mistake. Understand your legal. These are extremely challenging. Syndications are extremely challenging legal work, and you can run up a very quick $50,000 legal bill on your end. And I think, you know, folks need to understand that, right? You need to understand how you're structuring these things legally, because by the time you put a lot of these together, you're talking about SEC regulations and FINRA regulations. You need the appropriate attorneys to do that, and you need creativity, because you're going to be building very dynamic org charts that are going to be changing as you gain investors, as you lose investors. So understanding, you know, what that looks like and what that legal expectation is, and being ahead of the ball. So that is a great way to segue into the 3 hacks. The first hack, more than I say anything else, is be ahead of the ball. Be ahead of it. When you start your due diligence period, there is a lot of legal work and you know, work in getting a, you know, 10, 15, $20 million loan. There's a lot to this. And the further you are ahead of being in that space and understanding, you know, is my equity raised? Is my legal taken care of? Is my insurance quotes right? Because this is a very dynamic insurance market. Is you know, the surveys on the property, you know, the things that are kind of, that aren't as fun in the multifamily acquisition space. Getting ahead of those things makes for a smoother transaction, which makes happier investors and an easier lender process, and a lower legal bill. And then another hack would be, I think events like this are incredibly important if you're going to syndicate. I think that, you know, I've always made, this. I don't want to take up too much of people's time. So, like I said before, I really like to talk. But I went to a lunch one time in Franklin that I probably, you know, I don't even know why I went, honestly. When I was there, I met 2 attorneys, and those 2 attorneys are now friends of mine. They referred a deal to me that deal didn't go as planned for that buyer, but through that process, I met the person that did win the deal, and they are now my largest client. And so I always kind of go back, if you follow the lineage to any transaction that you do in this business, there is a weird starting point. And for me, it was going to a lunch in Franklin that, again, I don't even remember what that lunch was about, but it led to me now with my largest client. And also, you know, that loan was one of the largest transactions that occurred in Middle Tennessee. So it was a big loan for me, and it all started over. Don't even remember the restaurant name. So I think if you're going to syndicate, going to events like these can really help out, because you don't know who you're going to meet, you don't know whose card you're going to take, you don't know what lunch you're going to arrange, and then hopefully post-COVID, we'll all start, looking at each other again. And that is really, really important in the syndication world, because your ability to syndicate is your ability to network. And then the third hack is, all right, this time I am going to plug it. I do think that I am pretty good at syndication debt. So if you do plan to syndicate and you want to have a conversation about what that looks like, and ways to move it advantageously in your favor with respect to agency financing, then I'm wide open and always eager to have that conversation.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like what you see, be sure to follow our Generational Wealth Learning series. On select Thursdays, we offer cutting-edge industry information that would normally cost thousands of dollars. And the best part, our education is absolutely free. If you register through our events page, you can join us live, either in person or over Zoom. In the meantime, like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a beat.